The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
We got tanks up there. Let's follow a range on Detroit. I do have that on the target right now. I've got a couple right in front of me. I'm going out there. Right, I got him.
And we're back on the Lead Pursuit podcast. So a lot of you out there are model addicts. Admit it. That's fine. We're not going to judge you. Well, actually, I'll judge you, but Brett and Chris will not judge you. Unfortunately, not every model we want is available in 1/200th from Warlord or even from Armaments in Miniature. So tonight, I'm going to talk to Richard Carlisle, and you've probably seen the information about ROC Works out there and some of the 3D printed files and STLs and actual hard 3D printed miniatures that are being offered. So we're going to chat about that and see what the impact of the Blood Red Skies community is. Richard, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
That's no problem, Doug. It's brilliant to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Glad to talk a little bit about Blood Red Skies and miniatures and other things that I can waste my money on during this time of the pandemic. Yeah, exactly.
We can help.
You're so kind of you to help out with that.
We thought so.
Let's jump straight into it. I was on the podcast the other day, and I'm referring it to ROC Works. I called it ROC Works tonight. Brett beat me up. He's like, "Is it ROC Works or is it ROC Works?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm going to have Richard explain it to me."
Well, absolutely. It is ROC Works or ROC-Works. But ROC Works is the way I'd refer it to. That's partly because those are my initials, ROC. But of course, there's the ROC, Blackburn, and a few others that it refer to, which is in keeping with the aircraft side of things.
Perfect. So how did you end up deciding to do 3D printing for models and selling STLs? How did you end up saying, you know what, starting my own company in the middle of the pandemic to do miniature stuff seems like a really good idea?
You can start something whenever you like. It just happens to be right now in the middle of all this going on. But for me, it started a few years back. I was working with Warlord Games, so I think that's fairly well known. I was at Warlord Games whilst Blood Red Skies was in development, and the situations that went on there, the usual sort of Warlord Games things, we ended up with the team who was organising it all disappearing, and it was left to myself and a couple of others, Simon Tift, to pick up the ball, find out what was actually going on in China with our product, and make sure that the starter set, Battle of Britain, Blood Red Skies, actually came to fruition as planned and released and actually out to the marketplace. So it was an enlightening period, but it also meant that one of my passions, the aircraft modelling in the background, I was able to bring that to the fore and say to myself, yeah, I can bring something more to Blood Red Skies, but for myself, aircraft, it's something I've always loved doing. And recently I've left Warlord Games, and the world's open, the world's your oyster, as you often say. It's come together now. I've had this idea bubbling over for a couple of years. It wasn't taking any hold at Warlord. Wasn't able to get any traction there to make things happen. So now I can, because I've got the decision making in my power. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's one of the things that I've talked about a few times that I think gamers are less understanding of, I'll say, in the current social media and spin cycle. I don't know what term to use, but that game companies really do have a business model and they have a vision. And I pick on the guys at Warlord all the time, probably why I'm not getting a Christmas card from John Stollard. All right, that's fine. I'll deal with that. But I pick on them for how they think they interact and how they what their vision is. And sometimes their vision is, in my opinion, a very 1980s very extrapolated, obviously, from where a lot of people got their start at that company with initials like Warlord Games, but flipped, Games Workshop. But I'm surprised at the things that don't take traction. But the nice thing about business being what it is, and especially in the world of 3D printing, 3D modeling, the internet, being able to transfer large files and IP around very quickly, it's really heartening to me that all of a sudden you can say, you know what, if you guys aren't willing to do it, I'm going to show exactly how we can get there.
Yeah, and it was that whole model, the business model, is, as you mentioned, 1980s. I could agree with that. And there's some great people there, and there's some decisions made by certain others that most wouldn't agree with. But it's their choice or go. So that's the situation.
Yeah, I always love trying to explain business to gamers or people who aren't in business and saying that somebody has to be the boss, and the boss's decision generally sticks. And if you don't like it, go do your own thing. That's fine.
There you go. That's fine. That's fine. And I liked your interview the other day where you're talking about egos on the Midway, the people involved and the different commanders and the politics and naval politics and general personalities were so large that it almost unbelievable unless you read about them properly. And you get that in business as well. And when you've got an opportunity and you've got hopefully some skills to put things together and experiences, if they're not valued by someone, then believe in yourself and perhaps have a go at doing something yourself. You might be surprised. And that's kind of what I want to do here with ROC Works.
Well, tell me a little bit about your gaming background. So we know you as a Blood Red Skies person. That's how the Ready Room and that's how the Lead Pursuit podcast knows you. But every decision we tend to make we always have a lot of baggage from our previous gaming background, and that's why I tease, Brett for creating campaign systems that feels like Blood Red Skies plus Dungeons and Dragons, things like that. When we pull from our previous gaming experience, what kind of brought you to this point in your life game wise?
Wow, where to start? Well, I'd admit it. My first book was Rogue Trader. There you go.
One of those.
Yes, I was there. I left. I had a very short stint in the forces with the Royal Marines, and my career brought short. I had to do something else, and I was in an outdoor centre teaching kids how to fall off cliffs attached to ropes. And some friends of mine were employed by Games Workshop, and they said, you should come and do this, it's good fun. So I did. I left the outdoor adventuring side of things and joined Games Workshop. That was back in 94, right at the beginning of 94.
So you left the beautiful, wonderful, clean-aired outdoors to hang out with a bunch of stinky nerds wearing black.
That's the one. I just
want to make sure I get that right. Okay.
Yes. It took me a few years. I was very naive then, but it's when you end up running your own shop and realise that you need lots of air freshener. It's hanging out with those very fresh gamers.
It's a rarefied air, we'll call it.
Yes. So I spent a good few years at Games Workshop, and in 2000 I went to New Zealand to help a friend open his own shop, and I ended up out in New Zealand for 7 years, during which time...
That sounds
terrible.
Horrible.
Yeah, it was.
I feel your pain.
Very painful. I ended up working at Battlefront Miniatures as well for a lot of that time, and I met some great guys there, and still friends with Phil and Evan, the guys, Wayne. The rules were really in their infancy for Flames of War, but I helped out. I think I did my part in helping Flames of War come together with the production and manufacturing side of things, as well as working in the design studio. So by that point I was also still running my own shop in Auckland. So by that point I've done all my, if you like, my groundwork in the industry with Games Workshop in a shop as a manager, senior manager, looking after several shops in Holland, and then I've gone to New Zealand to have my own shop and work with Battlefront. But effectively from there I came back to the UK, and more recently I've ended up with Warlord Games, 5 years there now. Well, up to this Christmas where I left. It's through that period I've been involved in both shop, studio, manufacturing, moving factories, coming up with R&D, the first plastic sets for Flames of War. I was involved with the first Sherman tanks in a factory that made plastic widgets for electric fences. That was in
wherever you can steal industrial capability. It really doesn't matter. Somebody makes something that you can use.
And it was the fact that you go to guys in New Zealand who make these widgets and go, we think you could make a tank for us. They go, what do you mean, a water tank? No, a Sherman M4 tank in plastic, scale to 1/100th. You could do that.
I can't imagine people in the electric fence insulator industry in New Zealand are any different than here in the United States. And they probably looked at you and said, boy, something ain't right with you. How did that go?
Along those lines, it raised a few eyebrows. It definitely raised a few eyebrows. But what we found was, it's amazing how many people, you don't know what their history or background is until you really get to start throwing ideas around. And they go, wow, that's actually quite interesting. My dad was doing this in the war and he was involved with this. I'd love a go at that.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about your moving on from that to back to ROC Works. So you've got a diverse cross section of a background between industry giants standing up what are now arguably new industry giants working on the initial processes, going over to industry giants that have people from previous industry giants. So you've seen kind of a lot of it all. What have you taken and put in your personal kit bag for ROC Works, where you say this is ROC Works' vision, this is what we're going to concentrate on? Because obviously I think the gaming industry out there, people will say, doesn't need more powerhouses. It needs a lot more, niche market kind of people that are focusing on all the things being forgotten. How does ROC Works fit into that?
For me, it's the openness to new technology, new ideas, and the willingness to take a bit of a risk, educated risks, but have a go at something new and see if we can push our hobby a little bit further, service our needs, because I'm a gamer as well. I want my aircraft, but there's all sorts of areas and avenues we could explore. But right now I wanted to look at the new technology of 3D printing. The printers are coming down in price. A lot more people out there now. We're on that cusp of how many actually have their own. It's become so open to most any gamer if they're up to having a bit of a play and a go without too much of a challenge now. Even 2 years ago, looking at printing was quite an involvement and a challenge. Nowadays, it's not anywhere near that. It's almost a plug and play. And I think for me, ROC Works is... I want to see that experiment taken forwards to wherever it ends up, but it's being open to those new ideas. And I think our industry, certain key big powerhouses are already doing that. They're already looking at how they can push their IP and promote it and push forwards with the new ideas. And but others, perhaps in the historical market, aren't. That they are 1980s. That's where they're at, and I think there's a danger in just sticking to their guns on that. There's a bit of a danger in going forwards with technology unknown, with the STL side of things, for example. I'm sure Steve Toth mentioned that a little bit in a previous podcast, hasn't he? Where there is that potential for abuse. But for me, I picked Blood Red Skies to the aircraft market particular because Blood Red Skies has got probably the best community I've come across on Facebook communities to explore this sort of process and see what the feedback will be. And I think we can get brilliant prints for the actual physical models out from printers on a production scale. And I think providing STLs is a fantastic service that a lot of our gamers are going to jump at. And already, even though we've only got 5 so far, 5 aircraft so far, it's proving to be the case. There's been quite a big pickup straight away.
So why did you choose to jump straight, in a sense, into the retail market, to go straight to selling airplanes that have been printed in-house and selling people the STL files when it seems, perception at least, maybe not always being reality, but it seems that many of the STL producers out there are doing things via Kickstarter, and maybe in my own naivete, that's not understanding all the complexities of it and how many of those have actually failed. Because I'll be honest, I see them all the time on Tabletop Fix, but do I follow them to their successful funding or not funding? No, I don't. But what made you choose to do it direct retail the way you are?
Well, it's partly that. I've seen and been around people who are running Kickstarters, have experience in Kickstarters, and it's definitely a place to go. But for me, I think it's a place to go if you've got a bit of a following already. So if you're a total unknown and you're going out there out the bat, unknown with no history, so to speak, within this marketplace, yes, I've got my name on some rule books and I've been in the industry a while. I think people have come to find out about me, but to do a Kickstarter, I think that would be a big ask to say, I need thousands. Will you invest in me and I'll provide these STLs? The other side of it for me is that a lot of the people who go to Kickstarter, as you rightly said, that there's such a danger in that they underestimate their costs. They underestimate how much work it goes into actually making it come together and come to completion. And at the end of it, do they have anything left from that cash inflow that Kickstarter provided them? And I would 90% of the time, if it's their first or even second, I'd say 90% of the time they're breaking even. They're not actually getting perhaps anywhere near what they thought to help them progress their business. So experience kicks in and says, yeah, I want to get a bit of a groundwork. I want things to be steady and get some pillars in place that are strong enough to support a potential Kickstarter down the line. I'm not going to say I won't do one. I think it is quite a valid option later on, especially if there's opportunities for other games perhaps, or other ideas as they come along. But first off, let's get me known a bit and make sure people know that I'm around and that I do fulfill promises.
Oh no. We know you're around. Those of us who have our old GW source books, we know you're around.
Yes, the old Flames of War, yes.
I always laugh the number of rule books I open and see people I know's name, and I'm like, I can't get away from these jerks. They're continuing to ruin my life. So,
well, if you've got the old desert book for the original desert book for Flames of War, then you can blame me for the comic strips, Striking the Scorpion and things like that. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's funny what in a sense what a large but also what a small community gaming is, and the number of people, especially in the miniatures world, that all move back and forth. Well, so let's jump right into what everyone cares about, because I'll be honest, everyone's going to say, Doug, why have you been talking for 18 minutes about BS that doesn't have anything to do with the release schedule or what models are coming next? So
yes.
let's roll out there what we think we're going to see from you here in the short term, and then we can talk about some dream shots and other things that we'd love to see further on down the road.
Right, I've got my pen ready. I'm going to make a list.
All of Doug's requests. I don't really care about the rest of you out there listening.
I
care about Doug getting what he wants.
Absolutely, go for it. So, where to start? I think right now, I started really with a complete list of all the aircraft that I could think of and researched and discovered marks of that I think I would like to see, and every aircraft's on there right from word go, but I narrowed it down to the ones that I thought would be not immediately done by Warlord Games. I'd like to think that I personally don't want to be doing things that they are going to, for Blood Red Skies specifically. Blood Red Skies is something close to my heart. I love the game. It's invigorated me more than any other I can think of for a long time. And got to know Andy and a few of the other guys like yourselves, and the community has really inspired me, which is part of the reason why I've done it. The list of aircraft includes stuff that Warlord Games has got on its list, but those won't appear, but not in the mark that they do. I could well be doing marks. For example,
the Spitfire is a perfect example. So which Spitfire is on your release list?
Well, the release that's happened this weekend is the Mark V, which is the B or C, and it's got the tropical filters on it. Rather lovely piece.
Thank you. So I don't have to fashion fiddly little tropical filters to put on the front of my Mark 1, Mark 2s.
Especially that chin underneath the Spitfire to get that right. But of course, there's the other type of filter, which we might do later down the line. And that's the part of the beauty, is we can do the Mark V with the standard big chin filter. It's got the cannons on the inside position. I think Steve's done a fantastic job getting those wings right. The proportions are spot on. What's more impressive, I think, with the STLs is that it's going to allow us to revisit that Spitfire, that same one, later down the road, and give people the option to have guns on the outside position, maybe both guns, cannons we're talking about here, maybe without the filters, the blown Malcolm hood. So you can take all the different little marks that that Mark V incorporates, all the different changes that happen to that aircraft, and potentially release each one as an option.
I so hate you for that. I don't know whether it's because it's going to cause me to buy a 3D printer and buy the STL file from you, or if I'm going to end up just buying models straight from you. I don't know, but either way, it does not end well for me. So thank you for nothing.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's one of those things I think I want to explore more, because the whole digital side of sculpting has opened up when it comes to things like aircraft. I think with figures, you're seeing a huge explosion of D&D style figures out there on patrons. And again, that's something I don't want to go down the route of with the patron. But the STL options we've got would do something along that lines, where we can give people who bought into it early the free updates as we go along, as we bring these on. And it's a great way of servicing our existing customers who've invested in us. They've jumped on board to have a go at this early stage. We can give them those free options, whereas obviously the price of an STL would have to go up for each add-on type thing that we've added in there. Those guys would have paid once and got those extras for free.
Not that I'm going to suggest you find a way to be my new crack dealer, but I know plenty of us that would pay a membership fee just to be in that update window, and that would be like, ooh, look at the new things coming. I'm gonna get these and now be able to download them, and then myself would be broke buying resin printers and running those things. 20%.
It's all those other little things in the background that cost. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I'm saving money by having a membership. No, actually.
No. But that's the trick, isn't it? That's the trick.
It is. And let's talk about it just for a second before we come back to the rest of the release list. There is something people have to understand, is that there's a wide variety of quality differences out there, and that the beauty is you all are generating super high resolution STL files, but there is a barrier to entry to sometimes getting that quality from your own homebrew printer, because if you're only buying a non-resin printer, you're going to get certain levels of quality versus the really expensive, really time-intensive processes.
That's right. The quality of the prints will vary from machine to machine, manufacturer's machines. Then you introduce the different types of resin that you can pick and choose from. And even those, you look at a resin batch from early this year to now, and they've changed, even though the name's the same on the outside, they've changed the chemical mix, which means that you've got to then change your settings.
This is why I just buy miniatures from people. I am not smart enough to figure this out.
They bring all sorts of things in, let alone to say, I'm lucky I've actually got a space. I built my own shed to have space for this. I can control the temperature and humidity to a degree, which a lot of people won't be able to in their attics or in their sheds. The temperature change affects that resin so much. And with the screens not able to cope with the thickness of the resin or the viscosity of it, I should say, that makes a huge difference.
So if you're like me and you're lucky to be able to figure out how to mix epoxy correctly, I suggest you just buy the models from ROC Works.
It makes it easier.
Don't buy the STL files.
No, buy the STL files. It's far easier.
Yeah, exactly. It's so simple to do it yourself. But yeah, like I said, I can't mix epoxy without gluing my stir stick to the bottom of the plastic cup. So
ultimately, the whole plan was to look at the whole STL phenomenon, the printing at home phenomenon. Can't say that word. But we were realistic. I said to people I've talked to about this idea to, that they all came back and said, well, I still want the physical model. And at this point, I couldn't break away from just doing an STL and that was it. We found a way we can make it work, and it's working. The machines are doing a fantastic sterling job in the corner of the shed, beavering away, making all these aeroplanes. So the list, it's such a list. As you know, there's hundreds of different aircraft marks out there of the variety that we could pick and choose from. So what to choose first? Well, I was lucky. We've got Steve, who said yes to coming aboard. We've got Aidan and his son Rowan. And their STLs are absolutely stunning. They're crisp. They've got the detail. They're spot on for scale size. We've talked about the potential shrinkage rates and the distortion that can happen with printing. We've found ways around that. We're coming up with new ideas. Aidan's really, when he can, because it's not his full-time job, we've got to remember these guys have got proper jobs. This is their hobby. And they've done a fantastic job putting these STL sculpts together in a way that can be printed at home. And that's what we're trying to provide, is the choices. As I said, Aidan, the choice of aircraft was a little bit directed towards what he had already done as well. He had a bit of an advantage, a head start, if you like, where his son Rowan had done the CR-42 and he'd done the Gladiator, probably because someone was talking about Malta all the time.
And hold that thought for just a minute, and we'll come back to Malta.
Indeed. So coming back to Malta, with the Gladiators and CR-42 sorted, we looked at the Swordfish, which is yet to come out, only a few weeks away, and then we said, what else have we got? We've got the Devotine, or Devotine, however you say it, the 520, D520.
I always mess up those designations.
Absolutely. But most importantly, we got the Buffalo.
No, we don't care about the buffaloes and gladiators and swordfish. I don't care about. Well, actually, I do care about buffaloes. While I
very
don't
underrated.
want to model them, I need to for some of, especially for British Malaya, a couple other places where I need to do some early war kind of stuff. I'm going to need some buffaloes, and I will hang my head in shame as I purchase them and paint them. But
you mentioned the early war, and you mentioned the RAF. And I think that's, again, where we're talking to Aidan, we've got the finished version almost ready to rock and roll. So that'll be another add-on.
So let's talk about one specific airplane, because once again, this is
Not
about
the P-61.
Oh, Donnie, you totally up at me. I don't really care about anything else. And as Brett and I were laughing, and we're all, and Steve, and we're all talking about it, we're like, P-61. I don't care what the rest of the release schedule is. When am I going to see a P-61?
Well, I was listening, and I did make a note.
Excellent. Somebody listens to me. You're the only one in the world.
Oh,
So.
I don't think so. Sorry.
That's why you don't work for Warlord Games, because they're like,
yeah.
Shut up, Doug. We don't.
Don't work for them because we've got our own ideas.
Exactly.
But no, the P-61. Yes, there are a couple of aircraft ahead of it in the row, in the plan. However, it is on the list. It is one that I personally wanted to do. I'd also like to get a Mark 10 Viewfighter out the door as well, because it's just awesome. But we'll get to it. There are a couple of others that we want to test, because they are big aircraft, and we've got to make sure that the printing side of things can handle that. One of the challenges when it gets to the big aircraft is the distortions, as I mentioned a bit earlier, and you find that you can't put quite so many aircraft on, not just because of the size on the bed of the printer, but the way the print film peels back, the peel forces when a print is working. You'll find that the longer something is across the bed, the more distortion it potentially has. So with that big aircraft, and I believe it is quite big, I think that might be a bit of a challenge for us, but we'll find a way around. We can make it work. We'll figure it out.
What do you think I'm paying you for? Oh, wait, I haven't paid you yet. Yes, I'm not paying you for anything.
No, but I think that's sometimes what people in the background, they don't necessarily understand some of the big background sort of decision, the processes.
Pure technology that goes into that. Things may seem really easy because they see a finished product, yet there's a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
And failed resin blobs when things don't print properly.
And absolutely, I think that part of what I want to do with ROC Works is also take away some of the mystery, and we'll be doing articles on what we're doing and how we do it, so that people can see some of the processes involved and understand that when they see a price, it's that there's a lot of thought gone into how we price it. I know Steve would like me to put the price up quite a lot on the STLs.
Because we're Americans and we're capitalist pigs, and that's
absolutely. Absolutely.
I always hear that from my friends around the world. I'm like, it's not that simple.
There's a lot behind it, and I have done a lot of research into the variety out there. Bearing in mind, you've got companies like Shapeways and Thingiverse available, two ones that are quite commonly known. And they can provide different materials and manufacturing methods, and you look at the designs on there, and the shape's potentially right, but there's nothing more than the shape, and the prices they're charging are potentially more than we are right now.
Oh, absolutely. And let me just anchor down on that for a moment, because I think that's the difficulty I've had, is when somebody really cares about their art, and I'll use Pop Goes the Monkey as an example, and they go to Shapeways, then the price absolutely matches the quality. And someone has taken the time and the care in crafting those add-on bits. And I've spent more money than I want to admit for 40K and 30K add-on bits via Shapeways. But they're worth the money because they just don't exist anywhere else in a reasonable quality. Sure, I could go to Thingiverse and download it and have my buddy print it on even his high-end printer, and it still isn't as good as the best coming out of Shapeways. But that also comes at a premium. And all of a sudden, when I'm talking about a 1/200th scale airplane model where there is detail that I care about, and I do need panel lines, and I don't just need a roughly Spitfire shaped with a blob on the nose, Mark V. I need something that's really detailed. I think that's what a lot of hobbyists and hobbyist gamers need to kind of balance and say, there's a reason why we would pay a good premium with ROC Works.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was saying, the Shapeway stuff, there's nothing wrong with it. I think ours has got a far, far more detail, and we're not charging enough almost. But it's that difficulty of, we're a new company. It's a new idea. It's new concepts. We're pushing the boundaries a bit, and yes, there will have to be a premium at some point, but right now we want to get the ball rolling. So the prices, I think, are going to reflect that for a little bit, but people should expect those to go up. Right now, you've got to see the details that the guys Steve and Aidan Rowan have been able to put into these aircraft, and at the scale that we're doing it. I think if you've got an STL, you can easily scale it up 1/44th or even larger potentially. But
I'd love to see the detail myself, and I'd love to show it off at Gathering of Eagles here on Labor Day weekend. So if you send me some, I'll gladly show them to you. And if you send me biplanes, I'll never speak to you again, and I'll say terrible things about you on the podcast. If I open up a package that's Swordfish, Gladiators, CR-42s,
there you go.
Any one of those, I'll be like, I hate Richard. Chris, your models are here.
Yeah, here you go, Chris. Yeah,
let Chris paint them.
Paint them here. Have a Spitfire and
yeah, exactly.
And then 109.
We'd love to show those off. So I'll throw that out to the community. We know that a lot of people have a hard time pitching in for some of these things, and so we're going to pick up some models from you guys. But
absolutely,
if if as we find ourselves in this interesting release cycle, we will be doing Gathering of Eagles a couple times, and you can
that's fantastic.
always
Really looking forward to
feel
that.
free to be a remote vendor. You know,
Yes,
send us some things to dangle out
Thank
there
you
and
very
say
much. Yes.
you can go to their website and buy these. Because I
thank
think the community wants to see them, but there's always such apprehension about buying any one news model. I know there's always apprehension of people going and buying stuff from AIM where they sometimes don't see a whole lot of renders, or they see a couple of years of outdate painted model on there. So there's always some question.
Well, I do love Dave's stuff. I've got quite a collection of his.
I do, and I feel bad. I want to find somebody who would like to be an intern and just work with him, unpaid, to just crank out more models per hour.
Well, that and his website, because it hasn't changed since I first saw it back in 2002.
Oh, come on! Angel Fire websites those are the bleeding edge of technology, right?
Yes, yeah. He's got some fantastic stuff, and I know it's a bit of an issue, but I don't want to tread on people's toes. But I think there's an opportunity for us as well, and that the opportunities there's the marketplace is big enough to cope with my little business coming along, more than capable of coping with it all, and I still direct people to AIM and Dave's stuff because it's fantastic, and he's always been.
It is, and I just
so helpful.
People aren't used to dealing with, one-off mom and pop shops like that. He is super helpful, super honest about his timeline, super apologetic when he can't meet his timelines because someone else has swamped him with a big order. He has all those supply chain problems that any other small organization does. Where
Absolutely.
He's like, I don't know how many of these I need to print, and then when suddenly, out of nowhere, Warlord Games drops Mariana and Palau Islands, or just even does a specific expansion that no one saw coming, and he's like, well, now I'm out of Hellcats, and I have to print up a bunch more, but how many do I print? I don't know what the demand is.
Well, that's why Steve's doing an F6F.
Yeah, exactly. And he and I have laughed about that. I'm like, good on you, because I think some of these things that I trusted and expected Warlord to make the decision on, they had to make a business decision, and they said, we'll wait a while on F6Fs. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you. You released the expansion for Bolt Action where I need them now.
Yeah, I still get frustrated, but I think that's the same with any game we are invested in. We want what we want now. We don't want to wait on someone else's production schedule.
Well, and we've gone through it, whether it's a Games Workshop, Forge World, whatever it is, where you say, how did you not care about my army the most?
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's always going to be a business decision. Fortunately, I'm one of those horrible Space Marine players, so I know I'm always getting something released quickly from GW. But there's times that even with a large company like that, I've felt, oh, come on, guys, can we get back to where we know there's some money to be made, and a bunch of us clamoring for this model, and you're releasing snotlings to me and things like that.
Yeah, that raising the hand, it's always the fallback is the Space Marine, or in the case of all of the German forces.
Probably one reason that I chose RAF for Blood Red Skies and play Space Marines in 40K is I know something will always be released for those.
Yeah. It's going to arrive at some point very soon.
Exactly.
But yeah, I keep my ear to the ground. I try to make sure that we're not going to do something that Warlord are planning to release. But Warlord have got 16 games, and they've got to try and manufacture and produce enough for each of those games to keep everybody involved. But ultimately, Bolt Action is their core, and
Absolutely.
Black Powder seconds that. And that's where owners and heads of department our interests lie. They don't game, other than, certainly the head of design doesn't game at all. So they're out of touch in some ways, but equally others, that they know that they're where the bread is buttered, and that's where they're going to keep the focus.
Oh, absolutely. And we know that Blood Red Skies, percentage-wise, is such a small market, but it's still frustrating to us sometimes when you see something that none of us cared about for Bolt Action. And I'm not a Bolt Action player, I'll say that freely, but you sit there and you go, I really didn't care about that. Could you have continued to expand some of these other lines? But we'll talk about that. So let's take this weird thing that is Bolt Action, and the different ways it's moving. And Blood Red Skies is kind of being dragged along. Yeah, dragged
along a bit behind it. I mean, I when I was at Warlord, I was always saying that if we're going to look at the Pacific, Midway is perhaps a great starting point, but Guadalcanal, somewhere like that, where we've got a lot more variety of action perhaps to look at.
Yes,
Would always be interesting. And for me, it's those sort of campaigns that I will let lead me in what comes next. Having said that, certain aircraft like, say, the CAC Boomerang come to mind, which looks so cool and might have not really participated much at all in any action, but they did shoot down a couple of Bettys over Darwin, so why not?
Darwin, a scenario I was going to model, and then we totally got sidetracked into this release schedule that is Warlord Games. I was so ready to do Battle of Darwin, and I haven't gotten back to it. Maybe I'll get back to it after I fool around with some mid-war U.S. stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that's the great thing about what we're doing. I think if the popularity of a campaign leads us in that direction, then there's absolutely no reason why we can't adapt what we're doing or have in mind to do and say, well, let's actually look at the aircraft involved in that and make sure we get them out for everybody to have a really good bash at that campaign. I think everything that we're doing is all about supporting the game itself, and Blood Red Skies, I think, is one of those games out there that is hugely worth supporting. As a community, it's growing greatly, and I that's what I feel like I want to do, is help Andy where I can to make it even better, as I'm sure what you're doing with Malta campaign, but more importantly out on the computer game side of the computer game side.
Well, so let's shift to that for a moment. So, what are you all thinking, doing? And I'm asking a totally leading question here, being the guy that puts out Tabletop Simulator, Blood Red Skies. What are you guys thinking about for support for Tabletop Sim? Because I mean, it's kind of two similar efforts. I have a huge demand for models, and you people are producing models.
Well, strangely enough, someone talked to Steve about that.
It's weird. I wonder how that happened.
I wonder how that happened. But it's a totally natural thing to do. I think that the fact that the guys are absolutely willing to adapt what they've done for me, for themselves, for me, and make them viable for Tabletop Sim is fantastic, because it brings new bodies into the hobby that perhaps weren't so invested in perhaps RAF or Italians or something else. It expands their knowledge. Their enthusiasm for the game is maintained whilst we can't meet face to face.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's a fantastic idea that needs exploring even more. Warlord would be silly not to support that even further to the nth degree.
I would never say Warlord is silly, but
I think everybody just needs to get on to info at Warlord Games and make sure they say Tabletop Sim has really encouraged me to buy more physical planes.
Well,
please,
and here's the funny thing.
Support them.
I've had a number of Tabletop Sim gamers who are not Blood Red Skies gamers, and even people that say they're a majority digital gamers, that have contacted us and said, we really like this Blood Red Skies on Tabletop Sim. And, I never really thought about 1/200 scale airplanes. I kind of assumed that was something that dusty old men played with in their basements. But they've said, I think I'm going to go pick up, some Blood Red Skies and paint it up and do the hobby aspect that maybe they'd gotten out of in the digital era, where everyone had kind of been so used to buying whatever real-time strategy branded game for the game they played on the tabletop.
Yeah, they've come back into it. They're thinking about a little bit more, and they're saying, well, why won't I pick up a box of these guys? It re-enlivens them. I think it gives them permission to be 14 again and push their models around the tabletop. Yeah, it's like, wow.
Well, and I can't say this enough. So Warlord was helpful and has continued to be supportive within the lanes they're allowed to be of the whole idea on Tabletop Sim, because they didn't say no at the beginning, and they didn't shut us down. They just gave us very specific left and right lateral limits. But also the gaming mat community has been great, and people have said, absolutely, please take low resolution versions of our files. Here you go. Here's your MiG Alley mat. Here is your Pacific mat. Here is your, whatever, Cliffs of Dover mat. The community has been very supportive. And so I think the next step really for us is to say, okay, if we know that Warlord is concerned about their 3D models, then let's find an avenue of somebody else who has 3D models that can be downscaled, downsized, down-resolutioned to where they're not something that somebody can then go out and print 10 million of, but still look good to be pushed around the table. And I think people need to realize that there's actually a little bit of behind-the-scenes work that Steve does for me, making sure these things all work on the advantage bases and are that they feel like Blood Red Skies miniatures when we move them out there.
And I think this community is what I love about it. The helpfulness, the willingness to put their time and effort into something that's ultimately it's somebody else's game system and product. But we all as enthusiasts are looking for ways to help improve that. And it's got to be good for the ultimate manufacturer in the first place, because it's bringing awareness and expanding awareness and keeping people involved in slightly different ways perhaps, but keeping them involved in a hobby that sometimes isn't always fully supported by releases or new stuff.
And I tell a lot of people, I ask them to remember that there's a difference between no and yes. And the people I work with at Warlord and working with Andy, who actually still truly owns the game, there is a lot of, I can't say yes, but I'm not going to say no. And that means the world to those of us as third-party supporters, in that they can't endorse or they can't give us what we necessarily wanted, but they're not actively going to block us, which is a huge operating space for us to reach out to people like ROC Works and say, help, I need models.
it gives us the space to say, no, we can help and we can support you. And talking to Steve, it's a natural to say yes, because we've gone to the effort to do this for the community and improve Blood Red Skies as a whole, wherever we can, in terms of the support that is provided for it. And if we can do our little bit to help bring more gamers into the community, then that's what we're about. That's what we want to do.
Absolutely. And I think that regardless of where things transition in the next few years in digital gaming, in-person gaming, I think there's always going to be a connection there that should be leveraged by the Blood Red Skies community. And, even if we wake up tomorrow and everybody's back in-person gaming, I know a lot of people will be playing TTS because it's a quick way that you don't have to go to the gaming store. You can, 10 o'clock at night, call up your buddy and say, hey, let's play a quick round of Dogfight. And hop in and check your competitive list, do something like that. So for me, at least, not that I own anything, but I'm the guy supporting the files on Steam, I know we're going to keep doing things for Tabletop Sim.
It's fantastic. Yes.
The boundaries that we're given. So I always encourage people to keep asking about it. Don't feel like it's something dead. Sometimes I don't always answer questions on Steam because I have a million other projects that I'm into, so it may take a week for me to catch that someone left a comment. But we always try to answer what people want to know about the future of the game.
Yeah, like so you're taking the multi-campaign. Where do you envisage it progressing to now?
Well, it's funny that you answer that. Or ask that question. So we're obviously going to put out some dedicated Malta support, and you guys are helping us with that. And I really appreciate that, because that allows me to do more than just release some cards that are unofficial cards and release some models that have been pinched off of the, Axis and Allies expansion and rescaled and put on an advantage stand. But the good thing is we know we're putting out support for Mig Alley out there. We are going to, when it's the right time, not until Andy tells me it's the right time, put out some playtest, pieces to this where you say, we might try some Vietnam. And to put out those in Tabletop Sim, because, once again, it's great to drop stuff in the ready room. And it's awesome for people to see files there. What I've found is sometimes people actually will test your rules if you give them all of the tools. You give them the miniatures, you give them the cards, and say, just download this expansion to your tabletop.
It's there. It's waiting for you. Have a go. Give us
just
feedback.
Go play it, break it, tell me what didn't work. And if you're going to bitch about the model in Tabletop Sim, I'm going to tell you I don't care.
Oh, fantastic. I like that one.
So it's one of those things, which then I turn around to a leading question to you. What do you see for ROC Works for Korea, Vietnam? Because we know Blood Red Skies is moving slowly in those directions, and there's some things Warlord has said they'll do, and then there's a lot that they've said they have zero interest in.
And it's those zero interest ones that I think would be our first port of call, because the business decision for a company like Warlord Games has always got to be in mind, that mindful of the fact that they've got 70, 80 working employees to make sure they can pay. So they have to say to themselves, that the actual cost and return of this product, what's it going to be? Is it going to pay the bills? For me, I've got the same, but there's only me. I can afford to say, well, this month it's going to be a case of, I'll pay what's due to the sculptors, but for me, I want to invest in another machine. I don't need to actually take any extra on. I've got a full-time job. That's what that pays the bills. So for me, I can react and say, well, that aircraft, that sounds really cool. As long as I can make sure the price is priced the things right to pay Steve or Aidan, Rowan, or any other sculptor, the actual value that they deserve, then we'll say yes, let's do it. That's why I mentioned the CAC boomerang, because it's something that's a bit weird. Whether anybody wants it, I'm sure maybe a few, but only a few need to buy it from us to say, well, that's fine. That's good. Thank you very much. That's been worth doing. So those alternate aircraft that people might not, Warlord won't even look at, we will. I absolutely will look at those, and the same for Vietnam. If there's a way of doing different versions of aircraft as well, we will do that. But I do want to make sure that I'm not in any way competing with Warlord Games in that terms, because it wouldn't support the hobby and wouldn't support Blood Red Skies appropriately.
Absolutely. And I'll laugh and say sometimes this is an opportunity to lead turn what things we see coming. I know I was talking with Roger Garish the other day, and we're so frustrated putting 1/200th scale Phantoms and MiG-21s and F-8s on
Phantom
advantage
is
bases.
huge.
That maybe it's your opportunity to say, look, we have our Blood Red Skies Vietnam playtest pack in 1/300th scale.
You'd go 300th, would you? Yes.
And so we laugh that we don't know if that may be an uphill discussion with the Warlord sculptors, but by golly, if yours that fit advantage bases are in 1/300th, we'll feel better because our Phantoms won't nose over and touch the ground when they become disadvantaged.
There's so many different opportunities to look at other ideas and be open to other ideas. It's just what we're all about in how that works. But of course, with Blood Red Skies, it's about that advantage base. So as long as that mechanic stays there, there's got to be a way of doing it. So
that's why I cheat and use magnets on so many of my resin miniatures. Is that way I can get rid of the sabots and I don't have to, have these big feet on the bottom of them, and then I can also flip them over without them totally touching the ground on some of the larger models. Yeah,
I've got one of Ames Catalinas, a beautiful piece. I've got one of Warlord's Potential B-17s as well. That's a big beast.
And that's why we talked to the guys at Litco and said we kind of need, for both the larger airplanes and for going to Big Red Skies, as they call it, with 1/72nd.
Yes, with airfix.
We need a flippable advantage-disadvantage marker, so that hopefully that'll be coming out soon, and an ability to just buy a bag of those and go, I'm not going to bother flipping the stand because this B-29 is too darn big.
and that's a great example.
A metal one we've converted from a die-cast model.
It's a great example of the community just looking for alternate ways around potential issues they find within their own games or their own game groups or clubs, and how they deal with it. And that sometimes is what the R&D department should be looking at potentially to help adapt the game as they progress. Yes.
Well, we've been talking for almost an hour, and besides wasting the listeners' time and reminiscing about things like Rogue Trader and all those good old days.
Yes, epic.
where is the easiest way for people to find you out on the internet? Where can they go out and find ROC Works? So
it's ROC Works, or roc-works.co.uk. There are other ROC Works out there, so look for the ROC-works.co.uk, or on the Ready Room, just ping me, Richard Carlisle. Can always get back to you on that. You'll see me conversing with Ken often on there, and others. I'll sneak in a few pictures of what we're up to on ROC Works as well. Ken allows me to do that. Very nice of him. And I think so far that the guys have been able to see what we're releasing, what we're doing, a few ideas about the foam. I'll try and answer people's questions and queries about their own printing if they're coming up against any obstacles within that. That's certainly what we're trying to do on any of our blog posts as well on ROC Works.
Absolutely. And not that I'm telling you how to do your business, but after you mentioned that one, a partnership with Just Lasered where you're delivering me foam cut or laser cut foam with the nicely printed resin models in there. Yeah, I'll just start having to send you my paycheck every month. So
I thought we thought it would be a lovely surprise for those guys who just pitched in first up, and I've got to say a huge thank you to all of them. It's been a little bit overwhelming, not in terms of being able to produce, but you have an idea and you hope it's going to be accepted, and then when you see people actually jumping on board and in such numbers and enthusiasm, and I was really surprised. I thought one particular aircraft might do better than another, but actually they're all going really well.
That's good news. That's good news for us in the hobby that are concerned that there's a very narrow focus, because I don't think there is. I think it's very wide, at least in the Blood Red Skies community.
Yeah, we're trying to, it just happened that we managed to pair up the aircraft a little bit, but in this case, I think we are going to keep an eye on what people are after. We'll listen to people. I think we'll run a few quizzes, just to get an idea about what people are after, particularly. And if people shout enough about a particular thing, then I'm sure we can bring that to the front of the list.
B-61s, B-25s.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? That was supposed to be my inside voice.
Yes. Little boy voice, B-61, please.
Exactly.
Certainly single engine fighters we want to focus on, and the twin engine bombers will, or even heavy fighters, will certainly want. I will get an HS-129 in there somehow.
Yeah, exactly. I should have known that would happen.
That's a must-have. Absolutely.
Well, excellent. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. I know the listeners appreciate it, because now they have a little bit more insight into how you ended up where you are, and then what's on the release schedule and where you guys are going from here. So,
no, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the support to the community. Thanks for supporting the Lead Pursuit podcast. Thanks for keeping Steve employed making 3D models for you instead of for me. So my tabletop sim is now months behind. Oh, wait, no.
Oh, hang on a minute. I thought that was the other way around.
Exactly. So thank you very much for all the help, and thanks for being on the podcast. We look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you very much, Doug. Thanks for inviting me.